Hey there folks, how you doing? Welcome to the channel. My name is Eric and today we're going to be cooking up some southern food. I'm going to show you how to make some New Orleans Pecan Pralines, one of my all-time favorite candies to make. Now I do want to say before we start this recipe that making pecan pralines can be a little challenging, but don't worry because through the course of this video I'm going to share with you all the tips and tricks that I've acquired over the last 18 years of making this candy so that hopefully you can have success right out of the chute. All right, now I do want to warn you that this is a very rich and very sweet candy. I mean, sugar is the main ingredient in this confectionery delight. All right, everybody, let's make some candy.
To get started with this candy, we're going to need to toast our pecans. That's going to give it a nice elevated flavor. It's going to help dry out the pecans. And in the description box below, you're going to find a link to this recipe. It's going to have everything we're talking about. So into the oven they go, and let's look at our ingredients. First ingredient is going to be our buttermilk. Now, over the years, I've used evaporated milk, cream, whole milk, goat milk, but I like the acidity that buttermilk adds to these pecan pralines. So we're using buttermilk, but you could use basically whatever milk you want. And then I'm going to be using turbinado sugar. You could use white sugar, you could use lighter dark brown sugar, you could use a combination of both. I like turbinado sugar because it's easy for me to get and it does add a nice flavor and a nice color to the end product. Next, we're going to be using vanilla and butter. Notice my butter is cut up into small cubes. And we're going to keep this in the freezer. That's going to help lower the temperature at the end of our recipe. It's going to help our praline mix thicken up a little bit. And then it's also going to give it a nice rounded creaminess, which is exactly what we're going for. Next, we have vanilla, and just use whatever vanilla you have on hand. And then our last ingredient is baking soda. Now, this is a totally optional ingredient. Originally, this was added to recipes that used only white sugar because it sped up the Maillard reaction and gave you a really nice color. But if you use turbinado sugar or brown sugar, then you technically don't need it. But I like adding this to the recipe because I feel like it balances the acidity and it reduces the chance of your end product having that sugary, kind of grainy texture, which is not what we're after. We're after a creamy, rich praline. Okay, so let's put that away. Our pecans are now toasted, and you can leave them whole, just like that. You can chop them up really fine, or you can give them a rough chop. I like to give the pecans a rough chop because it gives me sort of a better distribution of praline to pecan. And my first tip for this recipe is to make it on a nice, beautiful, clear, sunny day. Just make sure it's not raining or the humidity isn't too high. This is an incredibly finicky recipe, and humidity can negatively affect the finished product. Now, if you're a pro candy maker, you're probably good to go and you already know how to make pecan pralines. But if you're just getting started, just don't make it on a day that's too humid. Now, with that being said, let me just show you the weather outside my kitchen right now. Making this candy during a rainstorm, much like divinity or fudge, definitely increases the difficulty level, just so you're aware. All right, so let's take a look at what we're going to be working with. You're going to want to get some kind of thermometer. I'm using this one by ThermoWorks. It's a digital thermometer, super accurate. If you don't have a digital thermometer, you could use a candy thermometer. And I'm going to set the alarm for 235 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the low end of softball stage, which is what we're looking for this particular candy recipe. So I'm just going to go ahead and set this up on this little hook on the side of my cast iron skillet. And tip number 2 is mise en place. That is a French culinary phrase that simply means to have everything put in its place, have everything that you need gathered and readily accessible, because this recipe will get relatively intense towards the end, and you don't want to have to be searching for your ingredients. So let's go ahead and start by adding our buttermilk. Currently, the fire is on about a medium. We're going to add our turbinado sugar, or whatever sugar you choose to use, and then we're going to add our baking soda. At this point, we're going to begin stirring, and we're going to stir pretty frequently. The sugar is going to dissolve. Your syrup is actually going to rise. It's going to increase in volume. And normally I wouldn't make this in a cast iron skillet, but it was just easier to film. So what I would recommend is using maybe a stock pot, something with a relatively high wall. It's just a whole lot easier to do that way. As we continue to stir on a medium heat, let's talk about tip number 3 for this recipe. Don't double or triple the recipe. And I know you're going to want to, but if you've never made this candy before, stick with the recipe the way that it's written. It's a very manageable quantity, and it'll allow you to make this candy and form the pralines and have the greatest chance for success. So That's my tip number 3. Let's go ahead and keep stirring, which brings me to tip number 4. Don't rush the candy making process. This is an art form, and sometimes it takes a little while to get to the right temperatures. And it is common for people to try to increase the heat because they're in a hurry. So if you're just getting started in the world of making candy, take it nice and easy. Learn from the syrup. I mean, it will talk to you through the process, and I'm going to show you what to look for right here. Notice as the color starts to get darker and I move my spoon through that mixture, see that trail behind the spoon, how it very quickly sort of gets filled back in. As we move closer towards that softball stage, that trail will stay open a little bit longer. And so these are just little signs that you want to look for while you're making this syrup. And it's still on a medium heat. We're stirring relatively frequently. Notice that it's got a really beautiful caramel color. That trail behind the spoon is staying open just a little bit longer at this stage. And right here, I can tell that I'm getting pretty close. The thermometer's reading 225, so we're definitely on our way. And as you can see that trail, notice how it's starting to stay open a little bit longer than it did before. And what I like to do is at around 230 degrees Fahrenheit is get myself mentally prepared because we're entering the final stage of this candy making process. I know I'm a stone's throw away from being at softball, and as I'm mixing my syrup right there, I can see that I'm probably there. Let's go ahead and test it by putting it into some cool water. Now remember, we do want to work fast because it is still heating up. And so I'm just going to pull that out of the water, roll it around in the palm of my hand. And if it makes a soft ball, I know that I'm at the beginning stages of that. And so right there, our candy is exactly where it needs to go. I'm going to go ahead and turn the fire off, but leave it where it's at because I want the temperature to kind of hover around that 235 degree zone just for a minute while we add our pecans. We're continually stirring. Notice we haven't stopped. We're just going to give it a mix. And once the pecans are completely mixed in, we're going to now add our frozen butter and our vanilla. The frozen butter is going to help bring down that temperature. It's also going to help thicken up our praline mixture, give it a really nice creaminess. And once we've got our butter and our vanilla added, we are back to stirring. Now, I'm going to stir this until all the butter melts. And you're going to notice that the mixture itself, the praline mixture, is going to have a bit of a glossy look to it. And it's going to be somewhat thin, but as you mix it, that glossy look is going to begin to go away, and it's going to start to thicken up. And that's exactly what we're looking for. This particular step is all about timing. And the more you make this candy, the better you'll be at recognizing how to approach it. But I like to take it off the stove at this point, prop it onto a cutting board, which will allow that praline mixture to just come to one side. And then I'm going to keep stirring until we lose some of that glossiness and that mixture begins to have a little more body. I want it a little bit thicker than this. If you form your pralines too soon, so let's say I, start forming my pralines now, they're not going to set up properly. And if you wait too long to form your pralines, your mixture is going to begin to crystallize and it's not going to have that beautiful flowy element to it. And so look at the texture. It looks like melted caramel at this point, and it's absolutely perfect. With this sauce spoon that I'm using, I'm just pouring it onto a silpat mat. You could use parchment paper, and I'm forming the pralines. You could use a regular spoon, or if you happen to have like a small ice cream scooper, that would be perfect to form the pralines, because the trick here is you want to form them as quick as you can. Notice how when we're forming the candy, the praline mixture just makes its way to the bottom, exposing the pecans on top, extending the base of the candy, and that's exactly what we're looking for. And if you've timed this step perfectly, and you should be able to with the recipe I've provided below because you're not making a huge quantity, you should be able to form up 100% of your pecan pralines without them becoming crystallized, which is inevitably what's going to happen in that cast iron skillet as it begins to cool down. Now, the recipe that I've provided is going to make roughly half of what I'm showing you here, but if everything went according to plan, this is what your New Orleans pecan pralines should look like.
All right, everybody, time for the moment of truth, our New Orleans pecan pralines. Now, what I'm going to be looking for the moment I bite into this candy is for the praline itself to immediately start to melt in my mouth. I mean, it should be a creamy, buttery, very flavorful experience. If for any reason it's grainy, it's still going to be delicious. It just means that something went wrong along the way. But the great thing about the pecan praline is that if it is grainy and you're unhappy with the results, you could take your candy and add it to ice cream and all sorts of other things, cheesecake and things like that, and it certainly doesn't have to go to waste. But a creamy texture of the praline is exactly what we're looking for. Let's give it a bite. There is nothing like a properly made pecan praline. I mean, it is smooth, it's creamy, it melts in your mouth, it has this rich, buttery quality that's loaded with flavors of caramel and vanilla and toffee, and the pecans themselves just elevate it. And I hope you get a chance to make it. If you have any questions about this recipe, leave them in the comment section below. And if you'd like to see me cook more food from the South, show me by giving me a great big thumbs up and dropping me a comment in the comment section. If you're new to this channel, we'd like to say welcome. Take a moment and click that subscribe button and that notification bell so you can be notified of our future uploads. We appreciate you being here. Bye-bye.